Good evening and welcome. Some of you may already have these stickers. If you don't, we'll get them for the Boston Conference. And the theme of the Boston Conference is the civic mission of schools. And it's oh so fitting that that is a theme when we are honoring Senator Richard Moore. Senator has been a member of the Massachusetts Senate for many years, but even more so, as far as our connection, he has been an outspoken advocate for social studies and civic education. Often in this state, and I think nationwide, we feel that we are fighting somewhat of a losing battle with the ongoing marginalization of social studies, education. And we recognize that town after town, school system after school system has in its mission statement, there's always some reference to creating participating citizens, active citizens. And there's no more active citizen than Senator Richard Moore. I had the privilege of serving, along with many others, on the Massachusetts Senate Special Commission on Civic Education, which was chaired by the Senator. And he truly led that commission with absolute sincerity. He has spoken not just in Massachusetts, but in many settings throughout the nation in support of civic and social studies education. So he is truly a friend of social studies, a friend of civic education and social studies education. Those of you who did not know Janna, she passed away, it was 2 years ago now. She was the absolute champion of social studies education in the state of Massachusetts and for all of New England as far as New York was concerned. She represented all that we seek to accomplish with students and in students. And we think it is very appropriate that Senator Richard Moore received the Janna Bremer Friend of Social Studies Award, because as much of a friend of social studies education as Janna was, Senator Richard Moore is truly that. So, Senator.
Thank you very much, and it is an honor. It's actually started in my educational career with the idea that I was going to be a social studies teacher. And when I was majored in history, graduated from Clark University. I still am in touch with my faculty advisor, who is 93. And still writing books. George Villiers has written a number of books, but mostly focused on the American Revolution. He wrote one on George Washington and his generals, including talking about the British generals at the time, and another book more recently on constitutions and how so many around the world have modeled them after the Massachusetts Constitution and the United States Constitution. The work that we had at the Commission on Civic Engagement and Learning in Massachusetts was one that was, we probably went through something of the battle that some of you feel you go through on a regular basis to keep history and geography and economics and government, all the social studies, to keep them in the forefront and keep them certainly on the minds of students and perhaps also on the minds of principals and superintendents and school committee members. But it is, because the first bill that I filed for this, Mitt Romney vetoed. And even though we had Trey Grayson, who's now at Harvard, at the Kennedy School, and was then the Republican Secretary of State in Kentucky, had said, you know, why veto this? This is a good thing. We should be promoting it. He didn't understand it, I guess. But we finally got it through and got it established. In fact, it was so good that the current governor's office, Governor Patrick, appointed members twice. We were after him so long to get the members appointed, he finally did, and then they changed staff in their appointments office and appointed other members too, so we had a double commission basically, but very effective, and we certainly had a great deal of input from Norm and from others in the field of social studies who really helped to enrich the program. And we've taken the commission now to, it's really having two tracks at the moment, although there are also some efforts to try to do something with adult education as well. I think one of the problems that the schools face today, not just social studies, schools generally getting public support, is that the public, for the most part, does not understand government. They don't know how it works, and they don't know how to get their opinion at least heard in government in a democracy. And so for 30 years we have not done a very good job in many schools, and we've had to fight the battle to get the word out, to get students to learn. We have a state law that requires essentially that students know the state constitution, the U.S. Constitution, that they know about the state government as well as the federal government. And that sometimes is honored more in the breach than in the performance. So we did get, fortunately, it was a former superintendent of schools, David Roach is a member of our Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, who has hounded the commissioner to make sure that he places a high priority on civics and civic engagement, not just community service, but civic engagement that really means something, and it's not just a nice project, but a project that teaches people how to be active citizens. So we did have a presentation with the board about a little over a month ago, with the commissioner and with I think pretty much the full board. We're waiting now to see what that's going to lead to. I know Commissioner Roach will keep on him until he does something positive. At the same time, we had the Commissioner of Higher Education as a member as well. And he, as it turned out, it was a fortuitous time because the public higher education, particularly in Massachusetts, was going through a visioning project. And because of the work of the Commission, they added another objective and actually made it their primary objective, so that the vision statement starts out of educating active, involved citizens, and then it gets into the economic aspect of it to have them have good jobs, good professions later on. And so our public higher education institutions, the University of Massachusetts and its 5 campuses, and the state universities and community colleges, will, starting this coming year, be expecting some competency from students coming in there, just as they do with English and math and other academic courses, to have a competency in civics and in history. I'm sure that's going to be a shock to some of the school systems not having had the resources to put the effort into preparing young people for an active role in our democracy. So we still have a battle to fight. We now have some goals to shoot for, and that's the direction that we're moving, and where the legislature is committed to that. Where we're actually going through a revision of our student government day program to make it a little more meaningful. It used to be a long program, a full-day program, and orientation and everything else, and it's been cut down partly as you experienced the pressure of all everything else imposing on your field. It's been cut back, and we now need to expand that. And we have an ally that has expressed a great interest in wanting to be involved, not only for Massachusetts, but I think it would be particularly relevant, certainly for New England, actually for the country, but certainly New England would be the easier group to take advantage of it. And that's the Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the United States, for the Senate, which is in the process of construction now. We'll have within it an exact replica of the U.S. Senate chamber for meetings. So you hold your meetings in what will look very much like the Senate chamber. And they really want to reach out In fact, I told the director, I said, you know, I hope you're not going to be like the Kennedy School. They only want to do international stuff, national stuff. We need to look at state and local government too, because that's where most of the citizens have their direct contact with government. And they said they do want to do that. They do want to do well. They're looking for programming suggestions. And I know Norm will mention, and we will certainly encourage them to be involved in your conference coming up. They should be listening to what you're saying, so that as they're developing their programs and their opportunities for school systems around the region at least, and certainly nationally, that they are plugged into that. We're going to hold them to that message. So I think we've got some opportunities coming along, both in the sense of policy and the sense of resources, that will help us to get to a point where this is just as important. It should be equally important. I'm the President Pro Tem of the Senate, and an earlier President of the Senate, Horace Mann, when he led the fight for public education, he didn't do it just to give kids a better chance at a good job. He did it because he wanted educated citizens and active citizens. The country was only about 50 years old or so at the time. And he wanted that to be a part of the message, and that was what why would taxpayers pay to educate kids if it isn't to perpetuate our democracy? You know, the people, the taxpayers, aren't necessarily in the business of helping kids get rich. It's nice if they do, but that's not really the primary business. It's really to educate them to continue our democratic traditions and build upon it. So I think we're in the right direction. We've got with folks like you in the front lines. I think we're going to do very well. I encourage you to continue to be involved in that effort. The civic mission of our schools, certainly at the national level. If that combines such a laundry list of national organizations and others that are part of that effort to make sure that we do have the resources and the public support. And that's certainly an effort. And I'll close with this point, because I know you have some professional speakers coming, but I had the opportunity to be last April at Harvard Law School on a program with Sandra Day O'Connor, who has got iCivics. If you haven't checked it out, your kids will. It's a very easy thing they do it outside the classroom. And she's been involved in that. It teaches skills as well as knowledge of civics. And I told her the story about how I had had a meeting when I was president of the National Conference of State Legislatures with President Obama and Vice President Biden. And the President made a big deal out of how he had been a former state senator. And so he understood our concerns. And Joe Biden said, well, I was a town councilman. I said, well, that's nothing. You have to be in the legislature. I told that to Senator Day O'Connor. She said, yeah, you're right, that is just nothing. She was a state senator in Arizona, so she understood. But she's been a terrific advocate of civic education as well. And we certainly hope she can continue to do that and be helpful. And we've got some great ones here. David McCullough is a strong advocate of teachers, generally, particularly teachers of history and government. He recounts having spoken on a Midwestern campus, and one of the young women came up to him afterwards and said, Dr. McCullough, until you spoke, I never knew that all 13 colonies were on the East Coast. And this was a pretty prestigious school that he was speaking at. So Dave McCullough is here, Garth's good one, of course, so we have some pretty good authors. I would point out, we have another author who's written at least 3 or 4 books, but 2 that I've found are great. One is Nathaniel Philbert, who wrote Mayflower, and it will change your whole view of Thanksgiving, reading that, because he's done it from researching some of the original sources. Squanto was a double agent, by the way. He wasn't just a friend who was teaching us how to plant corn. He wanted to be the Grand Sachem. Of course, Massasoit ended up poisoning him. So he wasn't ever the Grand Sachem. But he also has another great book on Bunker Hill, The Bloodiest Battle in the American Revolution. And talks about the forming birthplace of the United States Army in Cambridge, and how the early colonials came together in a manner of speaking, and in the effort to try to keep them together to get through that effort. But two very easy, great reads for folks, and some very important parts of our history, and relevant to the fact that all of your members are going to be here in Boston. So I particularly push Bunker Hill because it talks a lot about Boston in its earliest days, as well as the Mayflower. It talks about the founding of our country in many respects. Virginia, we get them. Where we were here first. The Irish were here, the Vikings were here, and they're all part of our group. So we're happy to have you here in Massachusetts. Not quite in my district. If you drive a little bit east through Southbridge, you start at the district that I have the honor to represent, and then it takes you an hour to get to the other side of the district. But we border the top of Rhode Island and Connecticut is the state. So, I consider this a great honor. I appreciate your support. I look forward to working with your organization as we continue, at least in Massachusetts, and certainly through the Civic Mission of our schools nationally, to continue to push the goals that I think we all share. Thanks very much.
We are having a major reception, Michelle, on Saturday night of the National Conference at the Edmund Kennedy Center. Okay, and basketball-wise, Senator mentioned Trey Grayson, who was one of our keynote speakers last year, and he is from Kentucky. So on the night before he spoke last year, Louisville won the national championship. The year before that, Kentucky won the national championship. So we had quite a double going. So you Connecticut folks, if you can pull off the men tonight and the women tomorrow night, okay, you will top that. So let's see what you can do, okay? Thank you.